Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder, to a fantastic video showcasing what the Waffenträger Wiesel 1A4 MK is all about. It's a new Tech 3 German SPA of rank 5 and bat rating 7.0, but for me it works better as a light tank, and I want to talk about this in detail, why that is, and just compare it then a little bit to the R3 in certain aspects. So what you have here is an insane combination and a completely different flavor to what we have up until this point in the German tech tree. At first glance it is very similar to the Marder A1 at 7.3, and there are a few differences to the Marder A1. For instance, it is just half the size, it is faster, more maneuverable, it shares the same cannon. The 20mm RH202 has just 400 rounds, so 4 clips, a 100 rounds, and, well, has no ATGM. Now, immediately I thought at first that this would get around the same battle rating as the Italian infamous R3 T20, which sits at battle rating 4.7 and has a somewhat comparable gun. But a closer look reveals two things. First of all, the Wiesel 1A4 gets the same ammunition as the Marder A1, namely the DM63 APDS rounds with 66 rounds of penetration at 0 degrees angles of attack and 25mm at 60 degrees angles of attack. So that is better than the HRAP rounds. But it's again nothing like, I don't know, 40mm AP FSDS from the Swedish Bofors boys. However, the biggest difference is the combination of third generation thermal imaging and a laser rangefinder. That is just fantastic. Further, you have the ability to scout, you have an artillery strike, you're so tiny that you can just hide behind a couple of bushes, and the bush gameplay I shall demonstrate in this scene versus the Centurion Mark 5/1. He knows that I'm here, he gets a few hits in, and thankfully he doesn't hit me with a 50 cal where it would hurt, because I have only 8mm of armor all around. There is just no strong point, and I only have 2 crew members, so I would die really quickly. A single 50 cal bullet can be enough. But then we have to talk about the mobility, because this is where it gets really insane. This thing has a horsepower to ton ratio of 30. You have 87 horsepower, which is not a lot, but you only weigh 2.9 tons. So you have no weight, and you have a ridiculously high horsepower to ton ratio. But yeah, this means you suffer a lot when you want to go through obstacles, so you have to use your gun to knock over trees, go through fences. Hell, even normal steel barrels would just stop you dead. You lose all your momentum. This is a bit of the frustrating part, but I guess that's so true for many other light tanks as well. So this is something where you can counter enemy light tanks and enemy SPA hard. You do not quite have a actual stabilizer, but because your turret rotation speed and your turret or your gun elevation speed are both with 60 degrees per second for a fully trained and aced crew, extremely good. You can imagine that you can make your 10 degrees of gun depression work, but you are limited to 45 degrees of gun elevation. So this is where some other weapon systems have better firing angles versus aircraft, and I made the experience that I found it much harder to deal with aircraft, regardless of the ammo type, than with just simply light tanks, as I shall demonstrate here with the tank that I also want to compare it a little bit, the M56 Scorpion. Both are very fast, both are the pain of enemy lightly protected tanks, but the M56 is more in the tank killing business rather than the light tank business, although it is comparably tiny and also very fragile. Arguably even more fragile than this thing. So I think that this is really will become the bane of everything. The Ontos, the Scorpion, and many other lightly protected tanks. Oh, that's just beautiful. I love it. And it's a bit taking on revenge. And it's really then where the comparison to the RE251 has to be made. The RE251 in comparison looks like your Joe average kind of standard light tank. It has a 90mm with 320mm of penetration. It is somewhat 50 cal resistant, and also it's fast, it can scout, etc, etc. But it has its difficulties dealing with helicopters or planes, you know. But what I want to talk about, this thing is much better at scouting because of the thermal imaging, especially on long-range maps, as I shall demonstrate here with this scene. Just can you imagine this tiny little bush zooming around the map faster than the RE251? It can go into positions much faster and easier than the RE251. It can scout better because of the 3rd generation thermal imaging. And it can somewhat defend itself from aircraft or helicopters, especially when you can prepare yourself with watching up yourself a slope or a piece of rubble, whatever. Then you can further increase the gun elevation. And you can hide in houses, whereas the RE251 is more than twice as big. So I'm not gonna say that the RE251 is a bad tank. Oh no, it's actually too good. But this tank is not really a threat for, let's say, heavy tanks. Think about the IS series of tanks. IS 2, 3, 4, and 6. They cannot really be killed by this thing that easily. I mean, yeah, certain circumstances if the enemy is in a really bad spot, etc. But for all intents and purposes, the RE251 just goes through the front because lol, light tank. This thing, years ago, I made a video about the RE251 saying that the RE251 was not the support that I had in mind for the Target 2s, etc. Different times, like half a decade ago. But honestly, this is kind of reviving a little bit this battle rating. And I love it. I think that this is a good addition. And I cannot wait to play the other tanks, such as the Ocelot and the Wiesel 1A2, where they have just different weapon systems. They have a battle rating of 9.0, both of them, but still, you kind of get what I tried to say. So, this tank is cursed, as it is blessed with the scouting ability. You can see I can make the minimap blink like a Christmas tree. But at this battle rating, the players are so not used to seeing enemies getting scouted. They just don't look at the minimap. In one battle, I had 38 enemies scouted and only got 3 kill assists for it, or according to intelligence. So that is a little bit of an oof, right? And it also doesn't really work out on every map. Also, one final thing which you kind of could observe here, the turret doesn't rotate 360 degrees. It has like 100 degrees turning arc to each side, but mostly that's enough, and you have neutral steering, so you can just swivel the tank around. And sometimes it gets so quick that you think you're about to lift off like a helicopter. This thing is fantastically fun. It's just perfect for both a quite casual approach. It's perfect for really working together with your team, like to involve something like this in a squadron of 4 players. You are really good at, you know, giving them vision by scouting. You're very good at neutralizing enemy light tanks and SPA that otherwise would become a real threat, or in tank destroyers, because your 20mm is just good enough to deal with all the paper tanks. And then other tanks such as the Jagdtiger Tiger 2 or so, they can do the heavy lifting and fight enemy medium and light tanks. So I think that in that aspect, this thing is a real upgrade for the German tech tree. and the beautiful, delicious and fun 1 versus 1 situations where you can use your brutal acceleration to fool the enemy and out accelerate their turret traverse on enemy light tanks, just like here. It's just fantastic. I admit, I actually had fun playing this tank, and I highly recommend you to get this. So yeah, I guess it would be perfect for here the Wiesel to get also an ATGM, like it would be the perfect tank. Not many, just like the BMP 1 or 2, right? But again, here, look at this. They have no idea that I'm here, and I just scout them. And now they are lighting up on the minimap. And the reverse speed with up to 30 kilometers per hour is also quite good, right? And the top speed of 80 kilometers, yeah, to be honest, I think I should nerf this thing a little bit, because it doesn't quite reach it except on roads, so it sometimes feels a bit more like a wheeled vehicle. But again, overall statistics, it's quite fun. It's quite something of a different taste for the German tech tree, and it's not overpowered. Obviously, allied light tank players would love to disagree, but that's not of my concern, right? The allies had way too long their fair share of fun. Now it's time for the Germans to troll the hell out of the enemy. Preparing ambushes, mimicking as a bush, it's just everything that I want. It's fantastic. And there is only one thing. Sometimes your allies are getting really salty about you taking the caps or storming forwards, and then they do something like this. Yeah, team killing. But anyway, not really talking about this here. Anyway, that's it for me today. I hope you enjoyed the video and you liked it. If so, why not give the video a simple like? For you, it just is a click. For me, it means the world. Subscribe and hit the bell if you want to see more. And as usual, we will see each other on the waves, in the skies, and on the battlefields of War Thunder.